Hello, everyone. This is Paula Shaw and my co host Bob Schwartz, and we are excited to welcome you to the fall season of Higher Energy, a podcast created by the Association for Comprehensive Energy Psychology. Hey, Bob,
Hi,
how was your
Paul.
summer? Did you have a good summer?
I had a great summer.
I did too. I did too. Though I did spend a little of it rehabbing a knee after taking an e-bike fall in Zion. But if you're
Oh,
going to get
nice. Well,
hurt,
not nice. Nice that you were in Zion. Not
yeah,
nice
I was
that
going
you
to say,
had an
if
accident.
you're going to
Sorry
get
about that.
hurt, that's the place you want to do it.
That's a great place.
So
I
we're,
was in Yosemite and Sequoia,
oh, two of my favorite
and
places.
I
All my childhood camping vacations were spent in Yosemite. That is a heavenly place. Good for you.
as is Zion.
Yes, it is. It is very much so. Well, we're ready to start our fall season, and we are starting off today with a very wonderful person who is not only an interesting lady, she's just like a really fun, lovely lady. And her name is Dr. Alison J.K. She's an award winning international best selling author and the founder of the Vibrational UPgrade. She is experienced in subtle energy work, and you know that's right up our alley here at ACEP. She's also a natural healer with a holistic approach towards healing, the thriving. You're working with the mind, the body, and the spirit. And this was all kicked off initially by 10 years of study in Asia. So I think without any further ado, we need to bring Dr. Alison J.K. out here so we can find out what that was all about and a lot more about what her work is in the world. Hi, Dr. Allison.
Hi, glad to be here.
I'm so glad you're here too. We are so glad you're here. And I think because you have such an interesting bio, but a lot of us fantasize about maybe going to another part of the world for some period of time. But you actually spent 10 years in Asia. So tell us a bit about that and how did that impact what you do in your work today?
Well, I was already running energy medicine sessions on clients and already involved with holistic nutrition prior to leaving for Asia. And I was having a session, it was like the third in a package of 10. And this is one of my earlier clients, and she was having great results. And I was really thrilled. And so I remembered with my hands over the abdomen, the third and second chakra, asking, okay, how can I get even more robust results on behalf of my clients? And that coalesced at the same time with a story I won't tell here yet, that I was now relying on my bachelor's, which ultimately had become out of psychology and into English literature, studying society and all the conditioning that gets created for society through marketing and advertising and sociology and politics. I had gone through those that range from psych, finding that it wasn't a complete, it wasn't even answering the question of like, how do we be the most thriving, happiest versions of ourselves? It was all trying to be a hard science at the time. And it was focused on hard wiring of the brain and applying that to capitalistic purposes like industrial management. So I was sitting there in my third semester as a psych major, just baffled, and chose to go to the other majors I said. So ultimately, I ended up with, in my bachelor's, English Lit. So fast forward back to this story I was just starting. At that same time, my primary profession was to be a classroom teacher, where I was teaching meditation and Qigong to already before Asia to kids, especially boys who were starting to get labeled ADD and ADHD.
Mhm.
So I was one Saturday morning, right around the same time, if not the same day, I was doing that session with that woman where I asked, how can I get even more robust results for my clients? I was balancing my checkbook in the pre-digital banking days, and I was not thrilled. You know, I had a master's at that time. And all I wanted was like basic housing, basic car, organic produce, and a massage a week, which I considered preventative health 101. And it wasn't easy enough for me. Now, I had already traveled overseas a couple of different times and lived overseas a couple of different times. I have a sense of how much fun can we have? How much of my potential can I reach? I'm here in a body, let's have fun. So I do things like skydiving and bungee jumping, and I'm a personal trainer in part because of that. And there was no sense of adventure. I felt caged at that point, like and not abundant. So it wasn't as easy as what I knew life could be.
Yeah.
So within 2 months, I was interviewing. I did what I had to do, found out about what I found out about, got brought in by a synchronicity from a colleague in my public school that I was working in, and learned about the international school system. Went where I had to go, interview with a bunch of different heads of international schools coming in, converging where we all went as candidates, got a bunch of job interviews, and chose Asia. So I moved because that's the seat of who I perceive not only understands how subtle energy and consciousness works, it's the seat of that understanding, but also they didn't shut it down around Enlightenment time like we did in the West, like the alchemists got shoved underground. They're still operating and organizing from it today. So I then went and became not only a classroom teacher, but moved up in my career as an administrator and a department chair while still continuing to run energy medicine sessions and holistic health and wellness at that time before I became a life coach. I don't like go by that because I feel like there's so many life coaches, it almost is meaningless.
Yeah.
But I realized I was not, over time, I was not just delivering energy medicine. I was helping people learn about how to then work with the effects, the outcomes of the energy medicine so that they could have a different path moving forward. So like in meditation, we change neurological paths as we meditate more and we learn to redirect. I use clearings and activations via energy medicine to do that. And then because part of my certification is as a behavioral change specialist, going for permanent behavioral change, not just to feel lighter, but to have permanent behavioral change, I then couple that with my meditation and yoga teacher background and work with applied mindfulness to then help the person develop more along the path of the new neurological pathway. So then they make new choices with that opening, and then they have different behaviors and a different life ensues. So I came back in 2010, having written my first book that started as my dissertation and became 400-page like text on what was developed at that time to measure subtle energy, in tracing back to our, in the West, loss of that understanding, and how basically my understanding at that point was, man, we would have so much more thriving and so much less suffering in the West if people only understood how to work with their consciousness and subtle energy system. And that, in fact, our power actually resides there. In over half of the rest of the world, not just the Eastern Hemisphere, the understanding is energy trumps matter, as opposed to the physical is more important, and what I see is what I can depend on. Over there, like a traditional Chinese medicine tenet is where qi goes, or energy, or let's in this moment also use consciousness, where qi goes, blood follows, which matches quantum physics understanding of what happens at the subatomic level. So that's my mission. And the second level of my mission, once I was back in the States for a year or two, was, you know, to come out of calling energy medicine energy work, or I'm going to send you energy, or forcing, when you get trained and certified at first, your family that's in resistance, family members that you want to share this new tool with, and they have no desire to have anything to do with it. Like when I train my students, like, no, you only go where people are choosing it, voluntarily wanting that shift. You do not ever walk up to somebody in a grocery store or in Whole Foods and say, you know, I'm seeing such and such a thing about you. It's no, let's professionalize this gig here, folks. So those are my two missions.
I love that, and I might have to back you up for a minute
I bet you
because
do.
having
That
been
was a lot.
having been a former elementary school teacher and
Oh.
the mother of a son with ADD, do you find that meditation, yoga, that kind of work calms the ADD mind and helps
Yes.
the children to function better?
Yes. So
Wow.
let me give you a parallel analogy. I was asked to then teach AP psychology in the classroom in the international school I was at in Taiwan. And this is after I had developed a global psychology elective course that took the Dalai Lama's biannual summits with the Western scientists there were neurologists, there were psychologists, and he had summits every other year with his Tibetan monks and the practices of meditation. And ultimately what came out of there was measurement, being able to measure the effects of meditation. Do you guys remember the picture on the cover of Time many years ago, the monk with the electrodes on his head?
Oh, yeah.
This is what it came
That's
out
Richard Davidson's work. And
out of UC Madison, out of UW Madison, yeah. So this course I developed, Global Psychology, was taking out, I used the text from a couple of his summits, and then I also used the Psych 101 textbook from Western Psych. And then after that, they asked me to teach AP Psych. So within these contexts, I was teaching meditation to from sophomores to seniors, particularly seniors who were in the college application process. They gave me the feedback of, oh my God, Miss K, at that point I was Miss K, not Dr. Alison. I just trip on that for a second. If I hadn't had the meditation practice, I don't know how I would have gotten through this process. The amount of stress reduction that they gave me involuntarily, unsolicited voluntary feedback about. So now it's flashback. I was at the first level and the middle school level. And I remember I was in an inner city school, and I remember the very first inner city son with his parents, and his parents talking to me about the ADD, ADHD diagnosis. And one of the things that I realized in my research to help the student of mine at that time was that Ritalin had been created before the diagnosis of ADD and ADHD. Mm-hmm. What I understood at that time was that it's more of the diet. And if you were to get a hair sample, you could see where there might be a nutritional allergy, right? So that was way back then. But I understood it not to be as that totem of psychology diagnoses in Western Psych, the biggest book in all of our medical training, states ADD, ADHD to be. I understood it to be to work with the mind, body, spirit system. Mm-hmm. So I helped him with his nutrition. And then when I would take the kids outside, and again, this is before I even was officially trained as a Qigong teacher. I'm still in the States. I took them outside. I'm pointing to where I do this here. That's why I'm shifting my posture to trees and bushes. And I showed them, after meditating, I showed them how to connect in with the greater field, what I call the Tao. And when they started to see the breeze happen, the interaction happen with myself in the bushes and the trees, and then they were able to do it, they had like this whole anchoring in another existence and understanding more themselves, the magic, and how to then that permeates through us via the universal life force energy or chi, and then how to start working with their own system, like to step up and take responsibility, that they had power over this, that they weren't out of power. So all of those factors, yes, it helps a child with ADD and ADHD, the nutrition, the meditation, and the recognition that there is something bigger than me. I have the ability to do stuff in my own system, and there's something outside of me, so that they feel more empowered to then not just be labeled and diagnosed and medicated.
I can see where this is going. I see that you have this really interesting mind that goes all over the place, connects a lot of things.
Yes.
I know we could go into it, and everybody would like go, oh my God. So, but there's something you're saying that I'm tuning in on, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it seems to me that one of your big ideas or themes here is empowering people to take responsibility and giving them some tools. Is that right? Am I getting that right?
A gajillion %.
Okay. And so the next part, then it seems to me, given the current context of where we are, our current context is one of a sense of loss of power and control due to COVID and everything else going on around us. I mean, that seems to be like the zeitgeist. So with that, and I don't want to get into the
No,
per se, but what I did want to get into, because our goal here at the podcast, as much as anything else, is to help people upgrade their energy, their consciousness, so that they live a better life. Hence, one of the reasons you're here. And with that in mind, and I also like practical, let's see if we can segue into like some ideas that you might have that people could use today, tomorrow, over the fall, this new fall, as we're coming into fall, for the next bit, because it's going to be an interesting time.
Indeed. So let me contextualize this. 2011, I was back from Asia for a year, and I had left behind my previous profession and was now full-time energy medicine, and was offering interviews at that point. First book was out, I think. Voice America approached me and asked me to do a podcast on the Mayan galactic alignment on December 21st, 2012. I was doing nothing whatsoever at all in my business, public facing. I was taking people to the Mayan ruins, VIP clients, but that was not public facing. Nonetheless, I said, okay, give me 48 hours. Let me tune in and see if I want to do this. It was a big yes. So I did it. In the process of that weekly show for 2.5 years, I interviewed not only the specialists that I quoted in my first book, What If There's Nothing Wrong, I brought on a bunch of specialists about the times we were living in 2012. So I actually ultimately became one of the yoga teachers and energy medicine practitioners on a specialty cruise to Chichen Itza for December 21st, 2012, where we had special permission to do a ceremony with a Mayan shaman. It was filmed around the world. Apparently I was seen as far away as Poland. It was a big deal there. And I had just been there the year before, and the ground, there were no TV cameras, and the ground wasn't vibrating up through my bare feet the way it was on December 21st, 2012. The Mayans were not the only ones. What I came to understand, that 2012 to 2032 is a 20-year window. This is now the subtitle of my second book, taking us through the greatest evolutionary leap of humankind ever. Mm-hmm. But Yogi Bhajan, the word yuga, age means age or era. Yogi Bhajan understood 2012 as a marker from one era to a new one, an old one ending, a new one beginning. Professional astrologers understand the old age of Pisces is giving way to the age of Aquarius. Mm-hmm. I could give more examples, I won't. The point is that this is considered humanity's greatest evolutionary leap. Another way to call it is the spiritual awakening. So that's why, like, for example, in 2012-ish, people were coming in saying they were having tinnitus, or people were coming in saying they were feeling more of other people's energy, and how do I deal with that? Or they were feeling like itchiness or like some kind of skin allergy. And I came to understand that all of this is, as we open more in the thresholds on our 5 physical senses that are there to help us navigate the physical plane, whereas if we had already meditated for a decade, opening more in the nature of the times we're moving into. Mm-hmm. So another way to synopsize this is that the old era we just grew up in, we're coming out of, all of our systems, banking, financing, education, medical care, particularly in the West, is based on Newtonian physics, where you can predict the physical, the cue ball. I'm going to hit the cue ball and it's going to hit that ball, and I can predict its behavior. Now we're in a quantum physics era where it's all a vibrational backdrop, and that includes the quantum leaps. So things can happen in a moment. And so when you're thinking about somebody within 10 minutes, you get a call or a text from them. I know everybody has had some element of that. You're thinking about somebody, you realize there's an email in your inbox from them. Yeah. Because there's a lot more interconnectivity now. And and we're meant to be stepping into more empowerment. So where we used to blame others and point our fingers, where we can see a heck of a lot of that polarization in the United States, for example, right now and over the last couple of years, this is attributed to the crumbling of the old paradigm. So let me take a side example. When somebody is going through energy medicine sessions with me and they're purging an old pattern, I see that and I give this document to every single new client or new person in any of my programs. I call it the healing crisis. As your mind, body, spirit system lets go of something, it's homeopathic. It's like a fever needing to peak before it breaks, or a zit having to get to the peak before you pop it. Your system, it might get worse before it gets better. So these are the suggestions on how to move through that. We are in that. So I never wanted to philosophize at all about COVID-19. I had been talking about the clearing that had been happening planet-wide, humanity-wide, for the Earth too, since 2011 with that radio show and all the interviews I was on in 2 of my 4 books. And I'm still talking about it because taking that myopic, ego mind infused perspective of, oh my God, there is so much mayhem and craziness, and you're pissing me off because you won't do this, and look at you making these choices over there, and how all of that blaming and that fright. If you take the mountaintop perspective or the satellite perspective, we are going through humanity's greatest evolutionary leap, where we are coming out of where we were a victim and we didn't recognize our power, and moving into where we recognize our responsibility over managing this mind, body, spirit system, and through every choice we make, creating our lives. So what I mean by that is I'm all about reaching human potential. The stats, officially science is saying 85% of the daily choices we make is from the subconscious and unconscious, and only 15% is from conscious thoughts you can hear when you observe your ego mind and its thoughts in meditation, for example. I after the tens of thousands of people at this point I've worked with, and what I have seen, it is higher than that. So when you learn to drive and you're saying out loud, put foot on brake, put foot on gas, and you don't do that anymore, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Most of the time, Bob.
Well, Bob does, but that's why he's really
loud.
No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Some of us evolved past that point. Go ahead.
All right. So that was fun. Thanks, Bob. So it's like when you're driving along, you no longer do that because it's a skill that you had to have consciously to learn it, and then it gets lodged in the subconscious. So if you add to that conditioning, parental imprints, karma, past life stuff, traumas, all of which get locked into either as like unconscious conclusions about the way life works as we're developing from ages 2 to 8, or traumas going into the subconscious. I call that back of the house consciousness. So my gig is if we are to reach our human potential, and we are to recognize our empowerment to, in every moment, we're creating our lives from the choices we're making or not making. If we flush more of that blocked down consciousness at the sub and unconscious level to the conscious mind, to the frontal lobe, we will have more presence in our daily life to recognize there's a new opportunity over there that is a completely new, different, and higher vibration than where we had been operating on in that area of our lives, for example. So the peripheral is taken off. And so in this process of shifting from that old version of my doctor told me to do this, my priest told me to do this, they're responsible for my body, they're responsible for my spirit, I'm just going to go around robotically, and instead into, I have some kind of connection with the physical. Like maybe what's showing up in the physical has something to do with my thoughts. Just even starting there is indicative of where we're moving into. So that's a start, Bob. Where do you want me to go next? The tools?
I've got a question. Well, but Bob, go ahead. Since you took the last joke.
I'm always like bringing it down to something simple, and I like the universe in the grain of sand. Give me the grain of sand. So like what can you make that like, okay, somebody's listening, they go, okay, Dr. Alison, that sounds good. How the hell do I do that in some small, I can do this tomorrow way.
And I'm wondering, does that involve chakra work?
Yeah,
because I've written a book on the chakras. I'm a big fan. So is there something specific we can guide people to do to work with those chakras to help create what you're talking about, Dr. Alison? And it doesn't have to be chakras, but I know that's an area of love for you as well.
Indeed. I would love to be able to say, I can give you like 5 to 10 bullet points of something simple to do.
Yeah.
But from my understanding, like when I am teaching about the chakras, I am a person that gets pulled into yoga studios when they're teaching yoga teachers for the Ayurvedic component and for the chakra component.
Mm-hmm.
It is a science. And like when I'm teaching local people, not in a yoga teacher training setting, a month for every week, one night a week, 3 hours, basic level of the chakras, next month, more advanced level of the chakras. It is not something that you can go to YouTube and listen to a crystal bowl or a singing bowl for 5 minutes and think that you've healed your solar plexus chakra.
Right. No, I don't expect, I'm not asking for that either.
Thanks so much, because I would love to be able to say that. So the first place you can start is this. Or let me do it again. That was one more time.
We just bombed.
Oh my God, I thought somebody's computer had a terrible glitch.
No, go with the unsettling. It's happening for a reason. So that's why I started with the context, so people can feel more rested and comfortable. And so in the bigger picture understanding of everything's unsettled right now, how do I work with that to my advantage rather than fight it with resistance?
Right.
The next thing is to understand that the ego mind infrastructure is given to us to, ego mind being a term for meditation. In the basic Buddhist premises, every human mind is neurotic. Here are the tools with which to work with your own particular flavor of neuroses. Not the sense that we have in the West of, let me run, let me not go back there, there's a monster under the bed, or there's some crazy I'm gonna find back there, and let me just stay focused on the physical, or have some checkout mechanism so that I don't go in, because what's gonna happen if I do? So that's one area where you can start to go in. You can go with the unsettling, use it to your advantage, and start with a sense of, if you hear your mind's thoughts, remember that I say it's about only 10% of the actual thoughts and conclusions and reasons why you do what you do and don't do what you don't do is not thoughts you can hear. But if you start with what you can hear and you're in the midst of making a choice, or you're in the midst of avoiding a choice, you could start with asking yourself, what do you believe here? What is the belief here that's false? It used to be in the beginning of these awakening times, don't believe your thoughts, question your thoughts. Nowadays, it's even more specific because we have been through the beginning of humanity's spiritual awakening. Enough people are aware that I don't have to believe them and I can question them. So now working with that, if you go out in nature or you're watching a sunset, creating, what I'm getting at is creating time in your life to value. So this is a societal shift in the West, particularly in America, to value where it looks like you're not doing anything, where it looks like you're not being productive. And have that stillness. Now we're talking about the yin, because part of what's happening is the yin and yang is rebalancing. Yang is active sun energy. Yin is internal seeding, intuitive, nurturing energy, moon, sun. And so having that stillness in this vibrational backdrop we're living in now, where you ask at the beginning, out in nature, 10 minutes, you're going to take a break in between answering emails. What could I be aware of right now to improve my life that I'm not aware of? Don't expect to hear a sentence with a comma and a period and clarity right there in that 10 minutes. You might need a night's sleep, and then you wake up the next day and you're making your smoothie, and all of a sudden some new thought comes in.
Yeah.
So what I know is the work that I do, bottom line, the clearings and activations, speed that trajectory up in a way that thrills me, because it shows me that when I asked universe, how do I get better, even faster, quicker results on behalf of my clients, that took me up and out of standard living over to Asia for a decade, has been answered. And it is going through the chakras. It is going, what I understand is the chakras are if they're the intersection of mind, body, and spirit, and chakra from Sanskrit to English means wheel. And they only turn when they have more vital life force energy flushing in them. And if every chakra is related to a certain area of life, and so all of our beliefs cover some area of life, romance, finance, body health, worthiness. If my intuition is showing me what somebody has block around, and then I can clear it, that means I'm going to not only free up the back of the house consciousness, it correlates with a certain chakra. So for example, the fifth chakra, the thyroid, every chakra is connected to one of the major endocrine glands as well. The biggest gatherings of neuroreceptors along the spine are where the chakras are known to be. So that's both of our communication systems, the hormonal or the chemical, the electrical or the central nervous system. So if the throat chakra connected to the thyroid and musculature tightness happens, if there's not vital life force energy flushing through, you have physical tightness in that area of the body. The fifth chakra, the throat chakra, is the one where if you feel like you don't have any choice, this is where we work. Communication, all that stuff you've probably already heard, most likely, I know you two have heard of all of this. Yes, I consider that the basic level of the throat chakra, but nowadays, since about 2014, I wrote about this in my second book, I've seen the heart to the throat chakra really wanting on client after client after client to be opened in a way I had never been shown before. And so what I came to call that is the co-creators channel. You receive the guidance. Chinese and yogic cultures believe the spirit resides in the heart chakra. So let's say you get some of that inspiration, that uplift. Here's another tip. If something makes you feel lighter, choose that. And so you get the uplift, you get the inspired guidance, and then you have the strength to choose it. That's now the fifth chakra's territory. So if you run with a tight neck, you have a thyroid issue, you're clearing your throat a lot like Paula just did, or you coughed. People nicknamed my yoga class, by the way, coughing yoga, because I would get this cleared so much because it's just my mission. Then you start to have the mind-body-spirit connection at the intersection of the major city hub that a chakra is. I can affect more. I can get into the past life, that spirit. I can get into the karma, that spirit. I can get into the mind at all levels of consciousness I've already talked about. That's mind. And I can get into the body, as I've already talked about, the systems in the physical region. So it is the quickest way to affect the most change.
Wow. That was, I have to say, one of the things that really stood out for me and that I'm grateful to hear you say, Dr. Allison, is the importance of just being still.
Yeah,
Because what I find I'm guilty of, and so many people in my world are guilty of, is thinking we have to be productive every second, right? Or we're doing something wrong.
And that's the measurement.
You know what my favorite time is? One of my favorite times?
What?
The shower.
The shower, yes.
I get so many, because I sit and I hang out in the shower, man. I'm for 20 minutes. I'm really bad for the water, but whatever. But like ideas come, and then I often write them down afterwards. But it's a time to be quiet, and just having that. And you can do meditation, and that's fine too. But just, it's not doing nothing. Yeah. I'm doing nothing. No, you're being still. That's something. You're opening up, as you're saying, the space for things to come through.
Yeah, we can't get to the new based on what the mind knows.
Right.
It's just contrary to the nature of the infrastructure. Yeah. So to access the new, we need spaciousness for which it to come in with. And then there's attunements we can do. When I say attunements, that's more for students. There's activations and clearings we can do to make that much more accessible, and eventually how you live your life, so that there's like a Qigong move. And I do this a lot. So I'm stepping forward right now, my palms facing you. Now I'm dropping at my wrists and I'm pulling back now. So that implies the flow of life. Yoga, they looked at animals, behavior, and nature and designed the postures around this. Qigong didn't. Qigong dealt with the flow of energy in the Taoist culture that traditional Chinese medicine is based on. So there's a balance that's happening, and that needs to happen if we're going to have a healthier system, where there is that time for the stillness, and there is that time to step out. There is that time to withdraw and receive, and there is that time to step out and take action.
I'm also hearing you've said it a couple of times, it's caught my ear about, I think that's something that people can do, is that you're one of the things that you're good at, you've nurtured in your life, sounds like you ask people to do, is to pay attention to the little communications, and don't let them just fritter away. There's stuff there if you pay attention. So you don't have to be still for 30 minutes. Sometimes it's just be still for 2 seconds, because you just had a thought, an idea just went by, and if you just slow down enough to say, wait, that was important,
Which is that mindful presence I was talking about in the beginning, that you have much more of when you clear out the back of the house consciousness. Absolutely, yes. And I know that if you look at, so here is another Qigong move. So right arm going out across body, bent to elbows, left arm now going out across body. I'm speeding it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I have, action isn't just like, you know how in the old days, and I am calling this the old days, and I know many people are still doing this, you would have a goal that you would feel you wanted to go after.
Yeah.
Go after in air quotes. And then you would list 1 through 5 as what the mind designs as, okay, so if I'm going to get to goal, I need to do step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right.
All of that is action based. All of that is yang based. There's no space in there with which to go the other side, where there's, and this I say so frequently too, if people only understood more about how consciousness and the subtle energy system works, there would be a lot less action taking. There will be a lot less making happen, doing, efforting, because if you're and when your subtle energy system is aligned in a certain way. For example, I had a desire, not yet a goal. If I were working in the old way, it would have been a goal. I was aware for my business that I had a desire for a certain thing to be happening in my business that would help boost it. And so I had that desire for a day, didn't do any work with it. But frankly, at the vibration I'm at and with the consciousness purified at the level it is, the next day an email came in that was literally what I was desiring, the how. Wow. So I didn't have to go through the mental, what 5 steps do I need to achieve that goal? Efforting, making happen, action, months, year, it just came in the next day. So there's a way to work with life and the universal life force in us that's also in all around us, that when we know how to engage with it more, it all becomes so much simpler. And that's access through the spaciousness we're talking about. So that if the idea comes in, it's not even just the idea coming in, it's having the wiring so that you are actually sending it out, it's being heard, and you're allowing and magnetizing it to you, all like without even me consciously doing it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That is so amazing and so right on for me right now, I have to say, because, you know, I've been a human doing for so many years, and I'm trying to shift more into being a human being and allowing everything you just said. And I also loved what you said, you can't get to new through what you already know. Did I get that right?
Yeah, let me give you an example. When I was living in Asia, and I was looking at with one of my colleagues, we're out at the market, and we're seeing monks dressed in their monk garb at the market 2 in the morning. You know, they were everywhere. So it was a constant reminder of you can do inner work and integrate it with your mundane daily life. This isn't meant to be a separate spirituality. So we were looking at fruit, and there was a new fruit to us, and we didn't know how to categorize it because the ego mind in sensory perception, I taught this in Psych 101. There's 2 chapters. One is you pick up this with your 5 senses, you pick it up, the data, and then you label it, perception. Right. And so when the data, after it comes in, your mind's going to the files to find out, like, how do I label that and make it a perception? If it doesn't have a file existing, you can't label it.
Right.
New. So I'm in the marketplace with my friend. We're looking at this new piece of exotic fruit to us, and our mind goes pear. We're looking for something similar.
Right.
And because we're in Asia, we go Asian pear. Yeah, you don't, we cannot, it's not the infrastructure. It's the wrong tool to get to the new.
Oh my gosh. So
yeah, it's relieving, isn't it? Look at the breath you just took.
Thank you. God bless you. Well, I don't know about you, Bob. I could be talking to this woman all day.
Yeah, this could go on all the way.
But
I'm aware of the time.
Oh, no, Bob. Get a question. I can see it.
Yeah, no, it's not the right time for this question. It's,
give it a shot.
So, okay, you invited. So I'm sort of the mind that there's a balance, like yes to everything you're saying, and at the same time, there is this thing about I see a lot of people. I do a lot of doing, and I'm really good at it. And I see a lot of people intending, and they get nothing done.
I'm so grateful you brought this up.
And so I think there is. It depends. Like, where are you? You know, the people who I'm into intention, but I don't do anything.
No.
Maybe you ought to have a 5-step plan. Versus the people who I do, and I work super hard, and they need to relax more. So to me, it's like you got to find that balance.
Yeah. Where's the balance?
I love what you bring up. The whole thing, Buddha's most common. So I'm in Asia. I'm with a friend, a Chinese friend who owns a local restaurant. I go to the Taiwanese temple. They're combined Taoist and Buddhist. I get the scroll from a little thing. Instead of selling gumballs, it sells a long Chinese scroll. And I take it to my friend and he reads it. He looks at this long little scroll and he says, balance, take the middle way. And I'm like, that's it from all those words. So it's Buddha's most frequently said thing, right? So yes, Bob, and it's so funny. Even just now, today, the post I did on my primary social media place where I go is about action, taking action, because I have seen like the initial learning, and it depends on where you are on the path, exactly like you just said too. The initial learning, people are like, oh, there's magic. If I do these clearings and activations and just sit back and receive them and just sit with my desire and focus on what I want using the LOA, I'm going to have it happen. That's why you're seeing me do the Qigong moves I'm doing, because there's that step out, receive, step out. So it's almost like how I go nowadays, because I had to action out that thing that came in, that email that came in to help reach that goal or desire I had for my business. I had to then reply and say, yes, I'd like that, please. And now I'm doing it. So there is this overemphasis, I think, when people first come across this work and they think like, oh my God, it's all just magic. And instead it's not. Like, you're still in a human body on planet Earth. We're still in the physical. You have to, so now it's coming all into balance more so after the initial like, oh, law of attraction kind of explosion.
Yeah, I have this story. I think it was on one of the law of attractions, but the story was a woman who she wanted to bring a man into her life. She couldn't. She had her intention and nothing worked. She was very frustrated until one day she realizes she drives into her garage and it's full of crap. It's a 2-car garage full of crap. And she has this epiphany. So she cleans out the garage and starts parking on one of the sides of the garage. And only then does somebody finally show up in her life.
The space was great.
Because she literally hadn't made the space.
Yeah.
She had to do something and I think I heard you talking about that. The heart can have an intention, but you have to embody it in some way in your action.
Yep.
Well, I think this point of balance just cleared up so much for me. It was a great question, Bob. And I think, as much as I hate to say it, it's a beautiful place for us to end, because time does exist in this world, but
schedules, calendars, indeed.
Or at least it appears that way.
I don't know. I actually had one podcast go into talking about time, because it's clearly a projection. If it changes, if we're having fun or we're bored, clearly that's a projection.
Absolutely.
How can it change? It's not a constant. So maybe another time we could talk about that, because I haven't worked it out yet either.
If only we had the time to do that. Don't get me started.
I'm sensing. I love that playful energy. That's one of the things I absolutely love about the divine masculine, is the playfulness. And we're all too serious about this. And, a sign of a blocked third eye, frankly, which is part of your intuition, not all of your intuition, is if you're overly serious.
Ooh,
not interesting.
Good to know.
So maybe that's another point. Nurture a sense of humor.
Yes, have fun.
Nurture joy and nurture fun.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. There you go.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
one of the most playful people I ever observed was the Dalai Lama.
Oh,
He
Oh,
was
always cracking up.
laughing at
Always cracking
himself
up.
all the time.
I've actually said, I know for me, when gauging a teacher that I wanted to work with, that I've honestly found worthy of teaching me, has to have that sense of humor.
Mhm.
It's a good
Absolutely.
indicator.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And as I go down the road of life between the eyesight, which isn't quite what it used to be, and sometimes I try to read text without my glasses on, and just, the things that you don't remember as clearly, that sense of humor is getting me through a lot these days because without it, I'd be feeling like a real screw up more often than not. So I'm glad.
You know those glasses I talked about in the beginning? Check those out.
Yeah, I will. The blue glasses, for
Yep.
sure.
You like glasses.
Yeah.
You like
All
good
right.
glasses.
Well, Dr.
Well, thank you,
Allison,
Dr. Allison.
what a
This was
day.
great.
What a great show.
Ah, I had fun. Thank you for playing. Thank you for, yeah, it all. Thank you.
It was wonderful.
We'll see everybody in this new fall season, and have fun in the meantime.
Yes, thank you all for being with us. We'll see you on the next show of Higher Energy.
Namaste.
Namaste.